control, shoveling dirt in every hole. Predators to condemn your soul, watching you and watching me. We're all connected but separated, misunderstood and so frustrated. A million armies of one have invaded, watching you and watching me. We live behind glass curtains and act like nothing's wrong. Soon you will belong. I know you're out there somewhere. We've watched you for so long. We wait for you to fall. We'll expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. The little brother wants to make headlines, be immortalized. Everyone's got an electric eye with the digital spies. They've watched you for so long. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. We the people have taken over. We the people are little brother, standing by to dethrone each other, watching you and watching me. Paranoid, the lens is our weapon, desensitized in our lust for attention, democratized by our voyeur obsessions, watching you and watching me. Slaves to perfection, don't let them project you as you are. Feel your every flaw. I know you're out there somewhere. We've watched you for so long. Wait for you to fall. We'll expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. Little brother wants to make headlines, be immortalized. Everyone's got an electric eye with the digital spies. They've watched you for so long. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. I know you're out there somewhere. This is the new totalitarian state. 1,000 eyes are waiting for you to break. Stay in line, don't make a mistake. We're watching. We watched you for so long. We wait for you to fall. We will expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere watching me.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or other use of this broadcast or podcast without the express written consent of Spaced Out Radio or Spaced Out Radio Limited is strictly prohibited. Listener discretion is advised.
Bumblefoot. Bumblefoot.
Are you experienced?
Stop right there!
From high atop the mountains of British Columbia to you, listening around the world, this is Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott. You can follow us on our website, spacedoutradio.com, on iTunes and TuneIn. Follow Dave on Twitter at spacedoutradio.com, on Facebook at Spaced Out Radio Show, or on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show.
Game on! Game on! Game on!
Dave, oh Dave, are you playing with Bigfoot and aliens again?
The password is...
Alright.
Okay, seriously, what's with the pointies?
Buckle up, space travelers. It's time to go for a ride on Spaced Out Radio. Mr. Bumblefoot, Dave is ready for liftoff.
Seriously, Dave? Really?
I'm Tony. Bye-bye. Love you. Bye-bye.
Captain, take your seat on my left. It's time for takeoff.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, start, 2, 1, boost ignition, and liftoff.
Just to be there with you, and I still trip over my feet, and my heart still skips a beat. I'm such a lucky guy, 'cause after all this time, it's like the deeper I go, the deeper I fall. The deeper I go, the deeper I fall.
Good evening and welcome to Space Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott, and it's good to have you along for the ride wherever you are on this great planet we like to call Earth. We are live right here in Uncle Jimbo's cabin, right here in the Great White North on this Wednesday night, early to Thursday morning if you're on the East Coast. Let's welcome in everyone listening in on spacedoutradio.com, on Spreaker, on the United Public Radio Network, Renegade Talk Radio, the High Plains Talk Radio Network, and on Revolution Radio, as we do this thing every night of the week, rocking in and out of every show, thanks to our resident guitar god, Mr. Ron Bumblefoot THAL, formerly of Guns N' Roses, currently of Art of Anarchy. Yes, Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio. Hey, we're all over social media, so help us spread the word. We're on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, you can follow me at Dave Scott, SOR. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. Tune us in on TuneIn. Download this show and others on iTunes. And, of course, our website is spacedoutradio.com. While there, we got some cool things for you. We'll get to that in just a moment. But if you want to take part in this show, you have to sign into one of our chat rooms, either on Revolution Radio, on Spreaker, on the UPRN chat room, or on Facebook at the SOR Space Travelers Club. And if you're on Twitter, use the hashtag Spaced Out Radio. I will get to your questions and comments in there as well, right in front of me. I'm looking for it right now. If you haven't signed up for our Spaced Out Radio SOR Space Travelers Club yet, it is time. Our next draw is this Friday. $5 a month. That's it. Your name gets entered in the monthly prize draws. You get access to a private posting section on our website. We're going to be building up much more here in the very near future. There's a lot of changes happening behind the scenes. But hey, we're going to give you a hell of a lot more than just access to our archives. While on our website, my latest blog is on Bigfoot. You may want to check that out. Eric Markham's SOR Spacewire for your latest and weird news. Click on that. Or if you've had a sighting or experience you can't explain, fill out an SOR Sightlines report. Our researcher, Mike Schmidt, is ready to hear from you. We want to welcome in everyone listening in on Renegade Talk Radio as we are live in Las Vegas. We are also live on the United Public Radio Network on 107.7 FM in New Orleans and over 160 countries around the world. And remember, if you're listening in on Revolution Radio, remember the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to freedomslips.com and donate today. After a couple of nights of jabbering about the paranormal, tonight we take a trek into the conspiracy side. This one involving aliens. Namely, one alien who, some 60-plus years later, still seems to rock the boat on whether or not the United States government has ever had extraterrestrial contact. Valiant Thor is a humanoid-looking alien, a good-looking dude, off-worlder, if I do say so myself. Valiant Thor is one of the greatest conspiracy theories out there, and one that still enthralls every fringe believer. Tonight, our guest, Craig Campobasso, is here to talk about his 7-year friendship with Dr. Frank E. Stranges. Dr. Stranges wrote a book called Stranger at the Pentagon, first published in 1967. Dr. Stranges, a little history about him, was a Christian preacher, as well as being a UFO hunter and a freelance private investigator. How he came across this story, we're going to find out from Craig momentarily, but a little bit about our guest tonight. Craig is a successful director and casting agent in Los Angeles and the Hollywood area. He's directed, wrote, and produced the short film Stranger at the Pentagon, which was adapted from the popular book by Dr. Stranges. In 2014, it won Best Sci-Fi Film at the Burbank International Film Festival and Remy Award at the World Fest Houston International Film Festival for Best Sci-Fi Short. We bring in Craig Campobasso now to Spaced Out Radio. My friend, how are you doing?
Hey, I'm great. What a great intro. Thanks so much.
Well, we like to impress, you know. We can't really show you cake and candles at this moment, but, you know, I hope the intro is good enough for you.
It was really good. And also, Dr. Frank was a marshal.
Oh, really?
Yes. And it was interesting because when I traveled with him, and he showed his badge, we got special treatment and were taken directly on the plane. So,
well,
yeah,
that's
isn't
always
that interesting?
Nice. That's
Yeah.
always nice, you know, to get that free stuff. Hey, my friend, I'm so glad to have you on, and we got you on for the first 2 hours tonight. This is a story that when I started getting into this field and looking into it just a couple of years ago, when I had my own experiences, and I have come face to face with 5 extraterrestrials. I've seen about 130, 140 UFOs and a bunch of other weird anomalies.
Wow.
And this all started for me in 2011. Previous to that, I had a beautiful, happily boring life. You know, and this kind of changes you, Craig. But the one thing, as my UFO interactions started and as my extraterrestrial interactions started, I can honestly say the more I researched, the more I kept running into this Valiant Thor. And it was just something that absolutely intrigued me, even though I didn't look into it. But night after night, it seemed like at least once or twice a week, here popped up this Valiant Thor name. What got you started on this trek? Like, did you always grow up being a sci-fi guy, or was it meeting Dr. Stranges that really changed your perspective on life?
Actually, I never was into sci-fi as I grew up. I myself had a major spiritual awakening at age 26, and I'm 27 now. Did you get that? Anyway, You didn't laugh, Dave.
Well, I was laughing behind the mute. I can say that.
That's right. You had it muted. Just say you had it muted.
I had it muted.
And anyway, I had a major spiritual awakening, and then I started to just look into things a lot more, and I started looking at a lot of sci-fi films and things like that. Now, I came across the book Stranger at the Pentagon in the 80s, and I read the book. I liked the book. The things that I liked about the book is that there were actual photographs of Valiant Thor, his vice commander Dawn, and another person from the ship who was called Jill, who was a blonde woman, and those photos are all over the internet. They were taken by a retired Air Force photographer named August C. Roberts at the Howard Menger Farm, who was another contactee during one of his many UFO lectures over the years. Howard has since passed away. I believe his wife Connie is still alive. Anyway, I had the luxury when I met Dr. Frank to talk to Connie. Howard was alive at that time, but he had Alzheimer's. So she told me about that day, and evidently they were having all kinds of they themselves were having a lot of visitations from a lot of different human extraterrestrials from around the universe. So they said every time they had a lecture, there were always various beings from somewhere else that were present. August Roberts, who was friends with Dr. Frank and called Dr. Frank about these photographs, said to Dr. Frank, the reason Dr. Frank asked him, well, why do you think this man is from another world? And Dr. Frank said, August said, well, he didn't have any palm prints or fingerprints. And when he looked at you, it was like he looked right through you. And there was just this energy, this aura of peace and love and unconditional love that was around him. So anyway, Dr. Frank, this is a part of the story that a lot of people didn't know, and I was actually very, happy to find out about, was Dr. Frank in his UFO lectures had a giant photograph of Valiant Thor up on his board. And he had Adamski, photographs of the Venusian craft, and would talk about Adamski, UFOs and the Bible, and at the very end he would point to the photograph and say, and this is an alleged photo of somebody from somewhere else, but he didn't know the name of the person. He didn't know anything at that time. And so we flash forward to Dr. Frank doing a 2-week engagement speaking at a local church, and one night was UFOs and the Bible, and the photograph was there, and a woman approached him who in the book is called Nancy Warren. The name was changed, and she approached Dr. Frank and pointed to the photograph and said, he wants to meet you. And Dr. Frank said, you have my undivided attention. And they went into a back room. She picked him up at his hotel the next morning, brought him to the Pentagon, and that's when Dr. Frank first met with Valiant Thor and learned his name.
Out of all the people in the world, Craig, to have that meeting and that interaction, I mean, I know what it was like when I first came face to face with an extraterrestrial. And it was on March 10th, 2014, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, not a cloud in the sky. And I remember how that changed me. Mine looked nothing humanoid. Okay? Nothing humanoid at all. What was his reaction, Dr. Strange's reaction, to knowing that here is a man of God, a man who is spreading the gospel,
Right.
all of a sudden going out of his biblical realm to meet an extraterrestrial?
Well, he was very open to it. He said when he met him that his whole persona, like Dr. Frank's whole persona, just melted into peace, and he wasn't afraid at all. He said there's just nothing about him that would cause anybody any alarm, because he was such he's such a beautiful human being. So if we back up and we say, and we understand, these are all the questions I had to sort of ask myself as I was writing the script, and I went over with Dr. Frank, that Valiant Thor is a created being. So a created being doesn't have a belly button. So if they're created from the Godhead, or how they are created, we do not know, right? But if you're a created being, I would put that in an angelic category. And from all the information that Dr. Frank wrote about and gave, was his mission was to come here for 3 years to assist in helping to bring a divine design, which was to assist in eliminating poverty, disease, and how to prolong life, but also was to bring about the state of affairs of all the atomic weapons and the nuclear weapons and everything that was going on the planet, because the bombs that had already gone off were already upsetting the stability of the fragile grid of the universe. So, and was saying that if this course continued, that there would only be destruction. And it went on more and more to that. I mean, I wish I could have the actual transcripts to all of these meetings, but unfortunately, I don't have them. But it was just fascinating to hear him talk about all of that. Well, like I said, just backing up, when I read the book, I thought it was fascinating. And in 2001, I had the opportunity to meet Dr. Frank, my casting partner at the time, Joy Todd. She had two friends who actually saw flying saucer craft in Arizona all the time. And that's why I don't use the word UFO, because they said they were actually saucer shaped. And she wanted me to meet them, and they were a very old couple. And they literally, upon meeting them, said, "Well, you know our friend Dr. Frank." And I just looked at her and I said, "Strangers?" And she said, "Yes, would you like to meet him?" And I literally was sitting with Dr. Frank the very next week and having lunch. So,
well, if that isn't fate pushing you in that direction, I don't know what is, Craig.
Yeah, it was... I mean, we had I felt like I was meeting an old friend, and he was just so kind, and I thought that was going to be it. It was going to be a fan lunch, me being the fan, and we ended up becoming quite good friends over time. And at one point, he told me somebody had called him to make Stranger at the Pentagon into a movie, and he wanted me to go to the meeting because I've been in the film business my whole life. So anyway, so I went to the meeting with him, and it was somebody who didn't have the credentials to make it. Had never produced a film or anything like that. And when I asked them, what else, what have they done? Because today, you just go on IMDb and see what anybody's credits are. And this person had none. So I told Dr. Frank, unfortunately, this was not a good fit for him to do. And that's sort of what got the ball rolling when I saw how disappointed he was. And I said, well, if you want, we can sit around and we can talk. And I said, because Stranger at the Pentagon is little vignettes of stories. It's not one full story. So we'd have to figure out the story. And I said, I think everybody would like to see this story from Valiant Thor's point of view, and that we should really keep it to his 3 years at the Pentagon, and that's where the main story is. So that's how we began and started. And he passed away in 2008, and I just put it away. And, we were all so sad. And anyway, years later after that, I just felt the inkling one morning when I woke up to make the short film. I had cast one of the casting directors on the sci-fi film Sky Captain and the World of Tomorrow with Jude Law and Angelina Jolie, and had done another movie with a producer who produced the Saw movies. Now, the Saw movie was a short film first to raise the money for the feature film, and they did the same with Sky Captain and the World of Tomorrow. So I decided I would make a short film and use that as sort of like the expensive sizzle reel to give investors an idea. I'd never planned to even show the short film, and once the world sort of caught on that this movie was being made, it just went like wildfire. Because this is really sort of the first movie that's been made of that era of, and George Van Tassel, Dr. Frank, and all of those early contactees.
So before you ever heard about Dr. Strange's, before you started getting into this, what did you personally believe about UFOs and aliens on another planet?
Well, I was always very, very open to life elsewhere, knowing that we were, that this world is living still in a world of duality. And I often sort of wondered what else was out there, and knowing if we look humanoid, and where did we come from with all the beautiful skin colors on the planet and all the different lines of thinking and all of those things. So reading things about Atlantis and Egypt and going back into those cultures and just saying to myself, well, where did we all originate from? Right? So I was always open to it. But I had my spiritual awakening, like I said, when I was 26. I just had another one about a year and a half ago that lasted. I didn't know you could have another one. I thought when you had one, that was it.
Mm-hmm. Some of us are lucky. We get two.
Yeah, we get two. And I don't know if we'll get another, but actually it's really nice because it's actually getting an upgrade, and it's just it just shows it's working on yourself spiritually, and a lot of that is the message of Valiant Thor as well, and his whole complement. That's what I was most fascinated to learn about, was who was his crew, and what were their daily functions, and there's just so much. There was just so much to know, and Dr. Frank didn't have all the answers as well. But the things I know that he did ask him about if there was religion out in the universe, and Valiant Thor said no. He said that they didn't need it because they were in constant communication with the Creator, and that in a I think more in an esoteric energy form, because they were at one with it. And so I know that didn't rock Dr. Frank on anything of his religious beliefs, but he was a very open man to all kinds of things. He also was a counselor as well, and counseled many. He actually counseled a lot of police forcemen, and and did a lot of work in those areas. So he was really an open book, and he really loved everybody, and he was a wonderful speaker as well.
Craig, during this show, we like to involve the audience. They play a major part of what we do here, and I have some questions from the audience that we're going to mix in here, if you don't mind.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Let's start with Bob here, and Bob is asking in the SOR Space Travelers Club. He says he's heard that Valiant Thor had the ability to materialize at will and walk through walls. Is this true or just rumor?
Dr. Frank said that, yes, that was true.
Man.
Yes.
Wouldn't we all love that ability?
But think about it. If you are a created being and you're living in complete oneness with creation, and you are knowingly a part of that creation, you would have full divine powers to do everything, as well as do all of the citizens. In my thought about that is that I do know all the crew members had full divine powers as well, and they had they had incredible technologies. They have spiritual technologies, which were a lot different. A lot of their stuff was living organic material. And they actually would merge themselves with the actual ships, and that's how they drove them, and they could do that with giant motherships as well. So the technologies and everything are really advanced, and you can only imagine what would happen if you go into the folds of different dimensions and things like that. And he also is a very interdimensional man as well. So yes, that was true.
Let's head on over to our chat room on Spreaker. And Mario is asking, did Doctor Stranges ever see Valiant Thor heal people? And if he did, what manner was it? Energy healing, light frequency, vibrational technique?
That's a great question. I don't know if he ever saw anyone being healed, but he did tell me a story about a gentleman who was in the Air Force, who flew airplanes when Valiant Thor was at the Pentagon, and this gentleman had very severe ulcers, and they grounded him. And Valiant was walking down the hall one day and stopped the man and put his hand on his head and on his stomach, and just for some moments, and then just said something to the man, just a passing hello or whatever, and that man was instantly healed, and he was not grounded. He actually went back and got tests because he knew something had happened there. And Dr. Frank told me in the 70s, when he was giving a speech, that Air Force man that Valiant told him about came to one of his lectures and said, "I'm the man that he healed."
Wow.
So, yeah, and I'll give you one other little story that happened to me. This was I'm not sure of the exact date, but it was several years before Dr. Frank's death. I had eaten some bad fish, and I literally, for about 3 days, was bedridden with severe stomach ache, and it just got so worse. I had to call a dear friend of mine to come pick me up and rush me to the doctor. They tried doing everything, giving me all kinds of, not like kaopectate, but what they give you, something similar to that, things to see if that would help the stomach, and it didn't. So they actually put me in an ambulance, and they rushed me to the hospital, and they did x-rays, and they said that I had a bowel obstruction. And nobody knew about this except for the friend that took me there, because this was just a long ordeal day. And so that night I spent in the hospital. And one of the vice commanders on the ship, her name is THAL, T-E-E-L. She's a red-headed woman with green eyes. And I felt her over me. I was in a twilight. I was like half asleep and half awake, and I felt her over me, and all of a sudden I felt bubbles going through all of my intestines. And I just knew when I woke up in the morning I was going to be fine and that I wouldn't have to have an operation. And when I woke up in the morning, which was early, sitting in the chair across from my bed was Dr. Frank. And he looked at me and smiled, and he said, "Teal called me early this morning and wanted me to come and tell you that she fixed you up last night." And I said, "I know, I remember that." So I had them redo the x-rays, and they said, "No, you're fine." And I actually got to go home that day from the hospital. That's a pretty amazing story right there.
That is a spiritual enlightenment right there, my friend.
Yes, that's right. So I felt very, very lucky. And when I was writing the script, I had the interaction that I had. Now, mind you, I never met any of the crew members in person. I would love to. I've met other people on the planet that have met Valiant Thor, and some have seen some of the crew members. I have not. And but when I was writing the script, I would feel each of them step in with their spiritual body, and I could feel who they were as a soul. And I have to tell you, it was probably one of the most beautiful experiences I've ever had, because you literally weep because they don't hide anything. Here we're used to, shoving things way down and all of that. They just let you know who they are. But when you have somebody like Valiant Thor do that, and you feel that energy, I think the first time I probably wept and sobbed for like a half hour straight because it was so beautiful.
No kidding.
But I have had that experience before because of when I woke up, I had master teachers were coming and waking me up. So, and that was for a different project that I wrote, which was a trilogy of books called The Autobiography of an Extraterrestrial Saga. So, so I had already been having those kind of experiences, so I was very attuned to those energies. So that could be one of the reasons why I was chosen to do the film as well. So I feel very lucky to do it because it's such a great story, and it's a story of hope, and it's a story of healing as well. And even though here we are all these years later, the choices and things that were made way back when, we get a beautiful chance right now to heal them so that we can move forward with everything on the planet and start learning what the truths are so that everybody here can start to learn about universal society and other worlds and how other people live, and learning how to break free from duality and to merge your light and your dark so that your heart starts ruling your mind instead of your mind ruling your heart. So that things are made for the whole and just not on behalf of the individual. So, and that's their concepts as well, which is really, really nice. They're all spiritual concepts of everything that he came with. So,
right, Craig, I'd like to start turning the focus onto Valiant Thor. Please, please explain to us the legend, how he got here, and what the story is about him.
Well, he came here on March 16th, 1957, in a scout ship, and landed at 8 a.m. on a Saturday morning in an agricultural field in Alexandria, Virginia. And I've often thought about that, and I thought, well, I guess if you were going to come in and land, you would do it early in the morning where there's not a lot of people, and in an agricultural field there's not a lot of people. And if you did it during the week, there would be a lot of people out at work, right? So there were two police officers that came on the scene. They drew their pistols and were behind their car doors, and when he walked out and they saw him, they just saw that they just melted into his presence of peace. And he walked over and talked to them and said that he wanted to, he was here to meet with President Eisenhower. Now, here's what I don't know, was there a precursor to his arrival by some other envoy? That's what I don't know. But he was taken then to the Pentagon, where he met with the Secretary of Defense and went through all of that. They did call Eisenhower, Nixon, the Joint Chiefs, all the powers that be. They all assembled that day, and they took him on the underground train from the Pentagon to the White House, where he met with Eisenhower. Nixon was late because it was his wife's birthday. And so that's how it began, and they decided that he would be here for 3 years to help and assist to put this divine design to work to really help the people of the planet. But I think he was here as a universal envoy as well about nuclear disarmament, and the atomic bomb and all of those things, because that was really, really a major concern for them, Dr. Frank said, out there in the universe. Because when a race starts doing that, they could blow, you could blow up the planet if you have a world war. So anyway, at the end of 3 years, they turned his proposal down. Nixon and Eisenhower were for it. It was the other powers that be that rejected it. So he left, and Dr. Frank said he returned a year later in 1961, came back on the exact same date, March 16th, 1961, and Dr. Frank met with him again. He came and visited Dr. Frank, and they would have periodic conversations. And I believe it was in 1967 or 68 was the first time that he was invited on board Victor I, which is his flagship. So there's Victor I, Victor II, Victor III. It goes all the way up. And anyway, Dr. Frank said the complement of the Victor class saucers, they were stationed at in 187 locations in, around, and above the Earth as well. And these craft are 300 feet in diameter. They're double-deckered. They hold 200 people. There are blueprints that Dr. Frank had of the craft as well. And he had posters made up of what the craft looked like, and with the actual blueprints that went along with it, as well as a starship that he said that Valiant Thor actually designed himself, which is 14 miles long and 7 miles wide, and he said it's an utter utopia on the inside. So there's all of those things. By the way, while people are listening, they could go to strangeratthepentagon.com and look. I just revamped the entire website and all of that as well. So, and we have the posters and book and all that. I think all the I have original Stranger at the Pentagon books. There's not that many of them left. But there's, because the ones that are going online are used, and some of them are going for like $100. So, which is a lot.
Interesting.
So it's, yeah. So I think someday they'll all be little collector's items. So it's amazing. It's just amazing. So, but those photographs are still to this day. Nobody's come forward or anything, saying that, oh, that was me, right?
Really?
So yeah, nobody has ever done that throughout all these years. So
right. Why did he come to Earth?
Well, he came with a divine design, and to help our government implement this divine design about eliminating poverty, and how to prolong life, etc., and eliminate disease. But in the end, why they turned it down is because it would put hospitals, pharmaceutical companies, it would put all of that out of business because everybody would be healthy, literally. So there would be no longer need for that. So really what would happen is there would really be no need for the monetary system, because everybody would be in perfect health and able to take care of themselves. So I think in the end that's why they turned it down, was because it would put all of those companies out of business.
I got a question from Gail here, and I think it's a great question. She says, how did we learn Valiant was created rather than born by a female?
Because he told Dr. Frank that, and when the doctors at the Pentagon examined him, they saw that he had no belly button. And so they, so he told them. But that's a great question. Yeah.
And he is Venusian. Is that the proper term for his race?
Well, they live on the interior of the planet. So when they build giant motherships, they terrace it so that there's all these different floors. But in their technologies, they can create a sky that looks like you're looking into the sky. They have this, they call it a synchrotron sky. And so it can pale from day into night. It can stay in day if that's what they wanted. So even though you were there, like on floors, you could be on a forest floor, and you would have waters and streams and waterfalls and a lake and the whole thing. And that it's the same thing of what they've done because Dr. Frank told me that all of the planets in our galaxy are populated. But they all live on the interior of the planet this way. And also, if you think about it, that we're living on the outside of it, where we're constantly bombarded with the elements, with the rays that age us, and they have resonation fields that keep them all at a young, perfect age. So they get to, you stop at age 30 if you wanted to stop there, and that's how you'll look for the rest of your life. I want that.
I totally want that now. I'm jealous. What do you say we catch a ship over to Venus and get some of that implanted into us? I'm game if you are.
Yeah, exactly. But they, they have openings where they go in and out of the planets, and from what he said, and I mean that makes total sense to me. I mean, I can't prove it, but it sure answers a lot of questions.
Mm-hmm. Why was his mission 3 years? Is there a significance to that? That's being asked by Canadian Joe at #SpacedOutRadio on Twitter.
Joe, I really don't know. I don't know why it was for that duration. I was just told that was the time frame that was allotted for him to be here. So I'm not sure why, but that was a significant amount of time for them to discuss everything and see how it would work and be implemented, and see if plans could be worked out, and to do all of those things. I can only imagine what his daily routine would have been. That's the one thing that I've really been curious about. Mm-hmm. Is where would he go, and who would he meet with, and what departments was he meeting with, and that. Now they did want his technologies, the military complex, which he would not give them because they weren't ready for it, and they wanted it bad. So Dr. Frank said it got pretty gruesome there towards the end with that, but. That's where I would really like to know all of what his daily duties were. I mean, I think I would find that fascinating.
And hearing you say that, we've all heard the stories about, and it's funny, I didn't even realize it was Valiant Thor, but we have heard on this show many a times that President Eisenhower had a choice to give up nukes, get all the technology and health in the world for everybody, and food and the gift of life. But then you take what his great-granddaughter Laura Eisenhower says. I don't know if you've ever heard her speak. But she then says that because he didn't take that deal with, now we know it's Valiant Thor, that he went with the other group, which is the Greys, who said, we don't really care about your nuclear weapons. We'll trade you some technology for people. So now that whole conspiracy around Eisenhower, to me, if you buy the Valiant Thor story, is really coming to fruition as to why it happened. It's very interesting.
Absolutely.
Have you heard that?
Right, as to why it happened, but also putting yourself in President Eisenhower's situation. Was he backed into a corner? Because remember, he gave that speech about the military complex towards the end of his reign there.
True.
Remember?
Yes, I do.
So was he backed into a corner and forced into it?
You know what? My whole theory on it, and I've thought about this long and hard since I first heard this theory a couple of years ago. I don't know, thinking on a human scale, I mean, hindsight being 20/20, but I don't know if on a human scale at that time that if I was Eisenhower that I could make that deal. I really don't believe I could have, because you have to realize the aliens, this is a whole new thing. Number one, we don't know who they are, what their their purpose is. If you think biblically, people from the stars, demons, you know, the whole biblical saying that the church goes by. And then, more importantly, now you got to worry about the Russians. They're developing nukes. The Cold War is just starting to heat up. How do you say to some foreign species that you didn't even know existed up until 20 minutes ago, okay, is really there to say, by the way, get rid of your nukes, when they're not telling the Russians the same thing? You know?
Well, that's the other thing is, was he also talking to other nations about that, or was he? Those are great questions, and those are questions that I have as well. Because if he was coming here on a planetary thing to come and do that, it was to be implemented throughout America first, and then when proven successful, the rest of the world. But with the nukes and all of that, were there United Nations meetings? Were there other nuke meetings with other nations as well? I would imagine that there would be, because it was very serious business back then. It still is today. And we know for a fact that periodically throughout all of these times from then till now, that extraterrestrial craft has come in over military bases and shut down all the nukes.
You have to wonder if that's part of Thor's team.
That they have the power to do that.
Mm-hmm. And that's where I get confused, Craig, because here's the thing. I mean, we hear so much about the negativity of extraterrestrials. Right. Yet they've shut down nuclear reactors and nuclear missile sites all around the world, not just in the U.S. They've done it in Britain. They've done it in Russia. If they really, really can do that, wouldn't they, at a blink of an eye, be able to take us over? Now, I'm not saying all aliens are good here, and spiritual beings like Valiant Thor, but I think as humans, we're smart enough to recognize that if they can fly across the cosmos to get here, shut down our protection, if you want to call it that, at the blink of an eye, I'm pretty sure that if they wanted to kill us by now, or eat us, or enslave us, they would have done it.
They definitely would have done it, and I look at it from the standpoint that if there are beings like Valiant Thor, there are many other beings that are like him who are protectors of the planet that have to come to younger planets to protect them as well. By the way, the one question everybody asks me is, where is Valiant Thor today? And even at the time of Dr. Frank's passing in 2008, he came back in 1961, and he will stay here on this world until the transformation is complete. So his craft, in the back of the Stranger at the Pentagon books, it actually has all the locations of where the crafts are. Now, the crafts are blinked into another dimension, but they can still see everything in this dimension from their screens. So, which I just find fascinating. Thor's Victor 1 is stationed at Lake Mead.
What? Area 51.
No, Lake Mead is by, that would be out there, right. But it's about a half hour outside of Las Vegas. Oh, right, by you, where you're at.
Well, no, I'm way up here in British Columbia. I just have a Las Vegas phone number. Yeah.
Oh, I see.
I just trick everybody with the Las Vegas phone number because I love it. So you're telling me right now, and the Spaced Out Radio listeners, that Valiant Thor currently is on Earth.
That's right, along with the entire complement, and that there are many, many enlightened races that are also here to help with the planet's transformation. So basically what they're doing is they're waiting for the planet to evolve enough to have some form of disclosure. Everybody's been pushing and wanting disclosure, and I always say, I come from, because I've cast so many movies, and we're always looking for what drives the character and what makes a character do this. Now, if you put yourself back in the times where all the secrecy around this was, which was back in the 50s and continued with the cover-ups, but if you were the government today, which I truly believe wants all of this to come out. I mean, I'm sure that there are certain factors of the government that wants this to come out, that they would find other ways as well to bring the information forth. You can't just do it in a televised broadcast. By the way, extraterrestrials are here, right? It has to be done in such a way that the world is not going to have a freak out. So I'm sure that they're thinking of many different ways for some disclosure to happen. I mean, isn't that an interesting concept?
Oh, the whole disclosure topic, my friend. You're going to pull my hair out. What's left of it? You're going to pull my hair out. The damn thing's never going to happen. I've come to the conclusion. I don't know why yet. I still think it has to do with the military-industrial complex, but we'll definitely keep an eye out on that one. That's the only reason why. That's the only reason why I wanted Hillary to get elected, because I wanted to see if John Podesta was going to hold her feet to the fire.
Right. That's right. Yeah. That's right.
We have about 2.5 minutes before we're going to go to break here, Craig, and I want to slip in Char's question here because I think it's important. If Thor is on the planet and wants to help Earth, can he not do something to help the situations around, from the war in the Middle East to what's happening with the unstableness in the United States?
Well, that is a really great question, and I really don't know how to answer that, but if you put yourself in his shoes, and I've often tried to do that as how would a created being think, right? What would he do, and is he meeting with those people? Is he interacting? I really don't know. I don't know how those situations get handled, honestly. But that is a great question. And if I ever find, some semblance or get some semblance of an answer, I will come back on and tell you.
Actually, you know what? I'm going to hold off on this question because we're into our final minute, and I think it's a good question. And damn it, if I would have started it now, I put this whole tease thing out there, and I'm just ruining it now. The show's over. No, I'm kidding. But sometimes you just lose track of time. When you're into a conversation, Craig, you just lose track of time, and I'm a bad host for that. Bad host.
You're a great host.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you. We're going to be stepping out for a break momentarily here on Spaced Out Radio. Our guest is Craig Campobasso. This is awesome, man. I am having so much fun talking Valiant Thor tonight because this opens up a lot of mysteries on the conspiracy side with extraterrestrial contact, and it's a good one. I'm going to get Craig to hold on right now. You are listening to Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott. We'll be back right after this break.
From coast to coast to coast, Blacklight Uncharted is taking on the paranormal across Canada. From ghostly hauntings to the UFOs flying above in conjunction with MUFON Canada, we're closely investigating what's going on in the northern skies and checking out the apparitions that walk among us. Check out our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com. We want to know your thoughts, we want to hear your experiences, and we want you to share your stories. The answers are out there, and we intend to find them.
Would you like to become one of our space travelers? All you have to do is click on the Space Travelers icon at spacedoutradio.com. For only $5 a month, you can get access to some great prizes, as well as private monthly shows, newsletters, and a members-only section on our website. Become a space traveler today.
Looking for news beyond the mainstream news? head to spacedoutradio.com and check out the SOR Spacewire. This is Spaced Out Radio's Eric Markham, News Director for the SOR Spacewire. Daily, I will bring you intriguing stories and outlandish reports from what's going on around the world. UFO sightings, paranormal activity, conspiracies, alternative health, and so much more. And if you have news, email me at news@spacedoutradio.com.
Have you had an experience you can't explain? Had a run-in with ghosts, maybe Bigfoot, or seen lights in the sky? Hi, I'm Mike Schmidt from the SOR Sightlines. I'm here to investigate your sighting. Head to spacedoutradio.com and fill out a report on the Sightlines. All your information is 100% confidential, and I will help you figure out what you've been seeing. File your report, and let's find out the answers together.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. With their money-back guarantee and the many benefits, how can you afford not to get one? Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com for mind, body, and spirit, and expect a miracle.
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our advertising tab. There, you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us, from radio commercials to banners and social media. Have a product you like our hosts to endorse? We can do that too. Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
Have you got your Cosmic Passport? If you need one, tune in to Cosmic Passport on Spaced Out Weekend. This is Elizabeth Anglin, ET experiencer, spirit medium, and host of Cosmic Passport. Each weekend I'll be bringing you interviews and support from other paranormal experiencers, and the best in intuitive spiritual guidance from across the globe. It's all happening starting at 9 p.m. Pacific Time, midnight Eastern, on spacedoutradio.com.
From British Columbia to Northern California, Pacific North Weird has Cascadia covered. Check out our feature videos at spacedoutradio.com, where I, Vincent Zunza, and my super sleuth partner Alexandra Sullivan track down the weird and strange stories from around the Pacific Northwest. From Bigfoot to Mel's Hole and everything in between. This is what makes life exciting. So why report the normal when we can report the Pacific North Weird right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Oh, there's only one way to rock. Loud and proud. In high definition. Radio 702 rocks. Las Vegas.
Every Saturday and Sunday night, as Dave Scott wanders aimlessly in the wilderness, you can come hang out with me, James Tyson, in Spaced Out Weekend. Starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, I'll take you along as we talk with some of the best experts in their fields. SpacedOutRadio.com is the place to find us. So sit down, relax, put your feet up. Enjoy the topics like the paranormal, supernatural, intuitiveness, and so much more. Hope to see you there.
Don't have time to listen to Spaced Out Radio live? Wherever you are, the car, the office, the shower, or even if you're traveling, we're right here for you. Each Spaced Out Radio show can be found on iTunes, TuneIn, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. It's the perfect way for you to catch up on our shows. For more information, just head over to our website, spacedoutradio.com, and tune in to us today.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. And hit us up on Twitter using the hashtag Spaced Out Radio. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
Welcome back to the second hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Tomorrow night on the show, we will be joined by Jason Sudbury. We're going to be talking cryptids of the South. Yes, this is a guy who likes to jump into the water with sharks. Yeah, we're going to get into that because that scares the living hell out of me. But either way, we're going for Bigfoot, we're going for Dogman, we're going for anything strange and weird that's prowling around the forests and the swamps. Jason Sudbury, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time at spacedoutradio.com. Hey, if you want to follow us on social media, you can do so on Twitter at spacedoutradio. Also use the hashtag spacedoutradio if you want to communicate with me live during the show. You can give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. Tune us in on TuneIn. Download this show and others on iTunes. We're also now on TalkStream Live, Radio Guide FM, and Stitcher. We're all over the board now. We're also broadcasting live on the United Public Radio Network, live on 107.7 FM in New Orleans and over 160 countries around the world. Good to have you along with us. We are live in downtown Las Vegas on Renegade Talk Radio, and we are live on Revolution Radio Studio B. Remember, the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to freedomslips.com and donate today. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. A Lurophile. A Lurophile is your password. Make sure you use it wisely, Space Travelers, because that's a good score in Scrabble. A Lurophile. Bill sets a password each and every night, right here on the mighty SOR. We are talking Valiant Thor tonight. Craig Campobasso is our guest. He was a good friend of Dr. Frank E. Strange's, who wrote the book Stranger at the Pentagon. Craig, welcome back.
Hey, glad to be here.
Okay, before the break, my friend, I was about to start a question, and I looked at the clock, and I'm like, well, that's a dumb time to start that. That's a dumb time. So we're going to get back right into it. And the question that I have is, if Valiant Thor is still here on Earth, as you say, and you would know much better than I would, has he ever tried to reach out and communicate with you, knowing your ties to Doctor Strange's, as well as the fact that you've done a movie on this?
Well, that is a great question, and it's that he's on the planet is what Dr. Frank says, not what I say. I'm just repeating what Dr. Frank had told me. So I have not met Valiant Thor or any of his crew in the flesh. I did on the very first day of writing the script. He came to me in a lucid dream, and that's a lucid dream to me is where you wake up in the dream and your soul is somewhere else having an experience, and you are fully awake and aware. And Dr. Frank had always told me about his very kind and gentle voice that had a strength to it. And so he had come to me in this dream on the first day, or the evening before I started writing the script, and showed me the path of the film, and it was like we were in a giant sound stage, and having this talk, and then showing me that they were clearing the pathway for it. And so when I made the short film, I had no money. It was really funded by the people for the people because the people wanted to see it. And so I did my best with all the resources that I had and that were coming in. But I would, for instance, say, boy, it should be great if we could shoot with a red camera. But, those are like $10,000 and the insurance and all of that. And then the next day somebody called me and said, hey, my buddy's a DP. He has a red camera. He wants to shoot the movie. You want to meet him? I'd say, sure. And hired that DP with a red camera. Then I needed a giant sound stage with a gigantic green screen. And I had called a couple producers I worked with, and they actually got me a studio with a gigantic green screen along with all the lights. This place let us build our own sets on the soundstage using their materials. We had the whole lighting system. And then I needed a visual effects coordinator, and out of nowhere pops up Mark Shelton, who was James Cameron's visual effects coordinator on Titanic and all his big movies. So anything I sort of needed, if I just voiced it, it would appear. And that, to me, was just fantastic because everything just moved, just really moved smoothly. Now, I did, like I told you guys before, I had the experience that I had was when I was writing the script, as when I was writing my books, and I would work with the master teachers. They would come in, and I would be able to experience their feeling body and who they were, to write from their perspective. And I had that same experience with Valiant Thor, with his vice commanders Teal, Dawn, Thawne, Zan, and also there was another, a lot of people didn't know this, and I was really quite fascinated when I found out that there is another created being that's a part of the Victor 1 crew whose name is Yanaya. And he comes out of Melchizedek. And he has an associate whose name is Yo, but it's spelled Y-E-O. So that's the main crew, and then there's the rest of the crew, which is about 190-some people. And about 30% of that crew is switched out about every 3 months, and they move from craft to craft, or they go back home on sabbaticals and come back in periodically. So that's my experience with it. I would definitely welcome meeting him, as I'm sure a lot of people would like to meet him. But Dr. Frank always said, believe me, when he wants to meet you, it will just happen automatically.
Do you put it out there to the universe, Craig?
I do, of course I do. Yes, of course I would love to meet them all, because working with them on the inner, you really get attracted to their heart and their soul, and the beauty behind what they're doing is really raising the consciousness of the planet, and all of the, just everything that goes along with it. It's something. I'll give you an example. I can't explain the love. It's so unbelievably beautiful. Like I told you that I sobbed, and I had 2 interviewers come to my house about 1.5 to 2 years ago, and they were going to interview me on Stranger at the Pentagon. And I knew as they were setting up that it wasn't going to go the way it was supposed to go. And that's all. I just felt something else was going to happen. And it took them about several hours to set up, and because, they had about 4 or 5 different cameras for all the different angles. And I started off talking about this unconditional love. And as I was talking about it, I saw this wave, this beam of pink light come down into the room and envelop them. And as I was talking, I saw the female host tears were flowing down her face. And then as I kept on talking and I was seeing this beam getting stronger, she just started crying and sobbing, and all of a sudden the guy started crying and sobbing, and they literally had to stop it. And I said, finally, somebody else gets to experience what I experienced. And the weird thing was none of the cameras, none of it could be used because nothing came out. It was just, I was just so grateful that they got to experience it. And I actually just saw that woman about a week ago. I had lunch with her, and she told me that was one of the most beautiful experiences she ever had.
That's wonderful. Wonderful to hear. We have a plethora of questions coming in from our audience here, and I want to try and sneak them all in here.
Sure.
Corey is asking, and literally this is my favorite Corey in the world. She is asking, and she actually is the owner of the Spaced Out Radio hot tub as well. So she's a really cool person. She is asking, Craig, have you ever asked Thor to come back to you in another dream?
Actually, no, I haven't. But now that you said that, Corey, I think I'm going to do that tonight. Thank you. That's pretty neat.
You know, I have to tell this story. One night, my wife was away with the kids, and Corey is like my sister. And she's like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Nothing, man." She goes, "Come on over, let's hop in the SOR hot tub and have a beer." So we do that.
Right.
And literally, if you knew where I live, man, it is so dark. Like, there's very little light pollution where we live. And I'm looking east because I get really screwed up by the compass here. I don't know why, I just do. Can't figure out. I'm just starting to figure out my east, west, north, south here because it's so different from where I lived before near Vancouver. Because I knew Vancouver's on my left. That's west. And anyhow, long story short, we're sitting in the hot tub, and I'm like, "Man, that's a bright moon out tonight. Look at the moon starting to rise." Realized it wasn't the moon. Within a few minutes, we were absolutely enveloped in the sky by the northern lights while we're having a beer sitting in this Space Out Radio hot tub. An amazing experience for the next, 2 hours, man. It was phenomenal.
Wow. Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Hi, and by the way, hi, Corey. Nice to meet you, even though I know I can't hear you.
Well, she's a wonderful, wonderful person. I love her to death. But let's get to another question from our audience. This one comes from Everett. He is asking, were the police officers that found Valiant Thor ever interviewed, or did they make any statements, privately or publicly, about finding Thor and his ship?
Wow, no. I've never even thought of that. That was nothing I ever asked Dr. Frank, but what a great question. But I'm going to definitely put that down because if I run into, I periodically people will surface who were a part of that or have access to those types of information. So sometimes they pop up and will volunteer things. So I would definitely ask that question.
Bob is asking a question. Do we know if Valiant Thor had any enemies?
Well, I don't know. I don't know about, you mean enemy? Well, enemies as in universal enemies, I'm not sure. I know that at the end, there was some pretty unscrupulous things that were aimed and done towards him on the down low, unbeknownst to the president and vice president, to gain information. So that's about the extent of it. But I would assume if in a universe that is probably fully conscious and dualistic, that I would assume that somebody of his stature probably does. I mean, them coming at him for trying to keep order, right? So, and I'm sure there's many others that are like him. By the way, he came from a council of 12, of which he was the head of when he originally came here. So,
Gail is asking a question. She says, Valiant Thor was in the public eye in the early 60s, and now apparently he's sitting on a craft in Lake Mead or bouncing around and no one hears or sees him. Why is he not in communication with anyone like he was before?
Well, that's a good question, and I've pondered that question, and I think when they all arrived here, and I know from the Mengers and all of the other contactees, some of them are still alive, and I've had the luxury of sitting and asking them lots of questions from those days. And by the way, a lot of people don't know, Dr. Frank used to MC all the UFO space conventions out at Giant Rock for George Van Tassel. So he was a bevy of information, and I went out to the Integratron with him on several occasions. And he, oh God, Dave, I forgot the question. What was it? Say it again.
Basically, why has Thor stayed out of the public eye, which is very much different than when he first arrived?
Yes. So my analogy of that is when they all got here, they were all very hopeful, and they were interacting with everyone here. And then I think that sort of over the years sort of probably diminished quite some bit, and because if you see some of the things that I've seen from some of the original contactees, that the press did not make them look good. Right, they made fun of them.
Right.
And which they were just telling their experiences and things. So that's what that's what I think most likely happened. But I do know that Valiant Thor is in contact with lots of people around the world. There was several people Dr. Frank told me that he was in contact with, and one of the gentlemen became so elderly they moved him on the ship, he said. So, and Dr. Frank was friends with this man as well. They literally they lived probably about a half hour apart. He had told me about this gentleman on several occasions, and Val and Dawn were friends with this man even well before Dr. Frank. And so they sort of introduced the gentlemen together, and they became friends, and they would actually go, from what Dr. Frank said, they would go on the craft together, they would go to the movies together, they would do all kinds of different things. So, but he became so elderly that they moved him on the craft. So, which, of course, when you go on the craft, you go back to being in perfect health. So if you were walking slowly, you could walk again normally. If you wore glasses, you didn't have to wear glasses. If you had an ailment, your ailment is gone.
Would it turn me thin again?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
That's what I'm going for that one.
My friend, we are kidnapping that ship. We are kidnapping that ship. No more of this stuff. No more of this stuff. Absolutely. I have a question from Eric, who has an amazing beard. He grows a really badass beard.
Hey, cool.
Yeah. And Eric is asking, do we know if anyone else from the Venusian race is here with Valiant Thor at this time?
Well, I don't know. I know that his all the people that are on his craft and on the starship, Dr. Frank said that they all had all different colors of skin. It was an array of colors and things that he had never seen before. There were light-skinned purple people. There were people that had designs. He said it was really spectacular the few times that he got to visit there, and so I'm not sure if the actual main vice commanders are all Venusian or not, or if they are all from different planetary systems. I'm not sure of that. But that's a great question.
Follow-up question from Eric, or his beard, one of the two. We never know who's speaking. Is Valiant Thor the same Venusian that met with Adamski and other contactees, or are these a different Venusian race?
No, his person that visited him was a very androgynous-looking gentleman that he named Orthon, I do believe that Orthon had a different name, but that's the name that George gave him here. And if you actually see the artist rendering that George had, you see that this is a very highly evolved being with the light. Now, I was very lucky. I went out several years ago out to the Integratron and to Giant Rock, and I was with one of the very original people who was there with Adamski from the beginning, and we went over and visited Daniel Boone, who was married to one of Van Tassel's daughters, and we talked with him for quite some time, and he said that he walked from where the Integratron is. They have like their trailers where they live there behind the Integratron on a different property, and so he had walked over to Giant Rock where George was living. George lived under the rock. There was a big, they scooped out a hole, and that's where he and his family lived, running Giant Rock Airport. There was a gentleman before him who ran it, and so it was already pre-dug. But he went out there the morning after George had that very initial visit where the craft came down and landed, and Van Tassel's being was a gentleman by the name of Salganda, who met with him and then was giving him telepathic communications on also how to build the Integratron. So, and I'm not sure if that was a Venusian being. I'm not sure. If you guys want to, you can go to Integratron, INTEGRATRON.com and read the whole George Van Tassel story there. The sisters who own it are awesome. If nobody's ever experienced the Integratron, you have to go. It's an amazing experience going in there because the whole building is built with no nails. And in the dome upstairs, it's a sound chamber. So the building was actually built as sort of like the fountain of youth that would keep you young and disease-free and everything, but it never was completed. But the sound chamber upstairs where they do sound baths with the singing bowls is one of the most amazing experiences for tuning your whole body up. It's incredible.
Mario has a question in the Space Out Radio chat room on Spreaker. He is asking, what was Valiant Thor's job at the Pentagon? What did he do? Did he work with other ETs, or was he strictly working with humans?
That, again, I don't know that question. Like I said before, that was one thing that I wish I really could have access to, is what was Valiant Thor's daily duties. Were there other extraterrestrials there? That I don't know. If there were, I'm sure that he would have interacted with them. Did he, maybe he interacted as well with we know that he interacted with the CIA, the FBI, the Secretary of Defense, the Joint Chiefs, and with Eisenhower and Nixon. But you can only imagine that he probably was meeting with all different types of departments, and what they would discuss and what they would go through, that I don't know. So, but boy, that would be fascinating to have access to those files.
Oh, could you imagine?
Oh,
honestly,
my God.
Could you imagine?
And here's the other thing I say is, if you were Eisenhower and Nixon, and here is this created being who comes and is staying with you for 3 years, you surely would have taken a picture. You definitely would have taken a picture with this man. So those have to exist somewhere.
It makes you wonder how thick that file is sitting at the Pentagon or the CIA building on him.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Exactly, and knowing that he's still here, is he still interacting with them, with the people that are in all those positions? I have no idea.
Oh, man. How do you find out, Craig? Honestly, like, how would you go about this long after this happened to find more information? We still see things coming out every now and again about Roswell or other events that have happened regarding UFOs or extraterrestrials. I mean, look at John Podesta. Just when you think the topic is dying down, boom, John Podesta lights a fire under everything. You know, and is this a dead story for information, or is this a story that could still erupt at any time, and somebody like you has to be right on board with that, right on top of it, just waiting for it to happen?
Well, I think even just being here on your radio show, if there's people that were involved in that, if they come forward or call me and they have information and they have documentation, that type of thing. Harley Byrd, by the way, who was part of Project Blue Book, he was Admiral Byrd's nephew. He confirmed, he was there during the whole Valiant Thor time frame. He actually wrote the foreword confirming the story with the case file number to Stranger at the Pentagon. Over the years, there were, some people would say, oh, there was no Project Blue Book, or he never really worked for Project Blue Book, or these things, and I really couldn't prove it, but then I was brought documentation of his honorable discharge papers that proved that he worked at the Pentagon during that time under special investigations, and also a letter from Admiral Byrd to a rear admiral at the Pentagon in, I believe it was 1956, asking him to bring his nephew, Harley Byrd, who was with the National Guard at the time, to bring him into a position because he was recently married and had a baby and needed a good job. So, and then all of a sudden he's now working at the Pentagon for Project Blue Book in 57. So I released all of those on, if anybody gets Gaia TV, George Nuri's show, Beyond Belief. I released all of those documents there, so if anybody gets that, they can see them there.
Do you think then that there is someone still alive who's holding out information?
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, I'm sure. What I know is that everything has a time frame and a time stamp and a signature that would mean that when the information is presented to me, and that it feels right to that if for it to be released, that's the right time for something like that to happen. So, as we know, Dr. Stephen Greer is putting all of these military officials and people who have worked at NASA and all of these various places, he tapes them at the end of their life, them telling their whole story, and then he doesn't release those tapes until they passed on. So we're getting all of this other testimony from all these people confirming all of these things. So and there's a lot of stuff that's come out, recently also from Bill Tompkins, who worked at TRW, and about all of these various, all kinds of things that were going on and all of that. So the information's out there. You just got to sort of dig for it on the internet. But I feel confident. I think once feature film is complete and comes out, I think the world will know more about it, and a lot of these people might start coming forward, and I would love to just do a documentary on all of that. And there's several people that I've talked to who met him back in those days, as well. And one lady had met him twice within a 1 week period. Another woman met him once as well, and they were like 15 or 16 at the time, and they're both now, in their 60s. So, but they said it was one of the most amazing experiences of their life. And interestingly enough, the one thing that both of the ladies said, and they didn't know each other, is that when they were around him, that he had a fragrance about him that was so unbelievably incredible that also that he's just not such a man of peace. Everybody says that, but they both said that there was a fragrance that just made them feel that everything was going to be all right. And I thought that was fascinating. And they almost said words verbatim about that. Dr. Frank never mentioned, that, but he did mention that when he looked at you, he looked right through you. He knew everything about your soul, and you could feel and know that he knew everything about your soul, and he loved you no matter what.
That's impressive. I've met very few people like that in my life. Very few. Damn it, they're intimidating when you meet them, but very few people.
Right.
So, a person like you, Craig, and I'm going to put you on the spot here because as a fellow journalist, that's kind of my job, I'm going to ask the tough question now. Everybody in a situation like you has sources. I'm not asking you to give up your sources. But obviously you're getting your information from somewhere besides what Dr. Strange has told you in the past. So are you able to know, without going, you have to protect your sources, are you able to know that there is further information on this case that may be released in the future? Or are there things that you are sworn to secrecy?
That I don't know. I don't have sources who feed me information, but I really feel confident that in the future that there will be people. Now, I've had people call me and say, by the way, saw your short film. I worked for the Department of Defense during that time. The story's true. I can't prove what they said is true. I don't know if that person is telling the truth or not, but that's where the conversation ended. Or somebody would send an email and say, well, I know that this is true, or I've had an interaction, or this type of thing, but nothing that can be proven concrete. Now, if there was a source and they wanted to come to me and give me that information, I would definitely source it out to the public so that people can then make their own determination about it and see what it's all about. So, because we know that there's got to be so much more to the story, not even about him being here this whole time, but also about his 3-year stay and really what happened on a daily basis. I know the main story of everything that Dr. Frank conveyed to me and the stuff that he wrote about, but I just like knowing the inner workings of it, and I think that would have just been fascinating. Like, I like the little small things as well. Did you go away there, Dave?
No, I am here, my friend. I apologize.
Okay.
I got a real...
Okay.
You know what? I can honestly say I hate this microphone because I have a very, very sticky mute button. And I don't like background noise. So here I am, hammering this thing, trying to make it work. So that one was my bad. I apologize.
That's okay.
Eric has a great question here, going back to what we were talking about in the first hour regarding the meeting of Valiant Thor and Eisenhower, then leading up to the Greys, trading technology for humans.
Right.
That meeting with the Greys would have happened in this timeline of Thor being on this planet the first time. So were the Venusians then in any way aware of Eisenhower's meeting with the Greys?
That I don't know, but I would assume that you would know. I sort of go back and say, if I was a created being and I had all of these abilities, I would probably be all-knowing about what was happening in my surroundings. The only difference is they don't get involved in manipulating free will. So they go into he may know about things that were happening, but did Eisenhower seek his counsel? Did all of that? I would assume that that would have happened, but I'm not sure.
When you go back to that deal that Valiant Thor was asking, yes, there was technology for the nukes, and let's give you eternal life, and get rid of time so that way we can just live and be free. That's a very intimidating thing for anyone to hear, even the President of the United States. Do we know what type of technology was Dr. Strange's ever involved in that conversation with what the Venusians were offering us as a way of speeding up the process of technology on this planet?
No, they didn't offer them any technology because they weren't ready for their type of technology. Their type of technology involved organic craft that is propelled by their own thoughts. So imagine if our government had that, they could go anywhere in the universe once they learned how to fly it. But so no, they didn't, and the craft I believe that they had at the time were all the crash saucers, which was definitely a inferior technology compared to the Thor crafts.
Out of all the things you have learned about Valiant Thor, what are some of the things, Craig, that really shocked you about him? Never mind the whole belly button issue, that he was belly buttonless, but what were some of the things you learned about him that just made you say, really? Are you serious?
Not really. Not really sure about that. I'm pretty open to everything and all of that, but it's. I would just. I mean, the things that I love about him, or the. From all the things that I learned, are the immense compassion to stick with, to stick with a up and coming world, to grow them into a universal society, so that they can live in that same. In that same happiness, the way that everyone was created to be. So I think that is sort of the end goal. And if you're a created being, you're immortal. And being immortal, really, there's no time frames and there's no anything. There's learning, and even created beings learn as well. Like we learn down here, they just learn on many different types of levels, interacting with different beings from different worlds. So I can only imagine. I just think it's fascinating.
what else do you think we could have gained from Valiant Thor that maybe the public has no clue? Because we do have those pictures of him in meetings, or whom we are presuming is Valiant Thor and his team. Do we know how much direction he was trying to give us? Do we know how much he was trying to save this planet in a way for the human species to come together as one? Or was it on his part pretty much straight interrogation?
You mean him interrogating them or them interrogating him?
The government interrogating Val.
Well, we know that they did. That wasn't a part of what Eisenhower and Nixon did, but from what Dr. Frank said, that the others did as well. But I think for him to come and stay for a period of 3 years was a pretty lofty amount of time to try and get some the work that he came here to do done, and to see that he came back a year later and has been here ever since. Now, Dr. Frank says he comes and goes as he pleases and has other universal work and things that he does, of which nature I'm not sure of. But if he was ahead of this Council of 12, is it a Council of 12 that garners the entire universe? Is it just this section of the universe? I'm not sure. But I would just say that even in his own divine mind, knowing that what he came here to do was a failure, that all these years later, bringing it back forth for a healing to take place, that, we have noticed the planet spiritually transform by leaps and bounds since the 70s. There's really been an immense quickening of spirituality that has gone across the planet. And I think, me being in the film business, I've seen where film and television has gone. And the next place for it to go is to start bringing these real stories to life and getting them out there in the public for people to really take them and absorb them, and to understand that there is life out there in the universe, and that we are going to, in the near future, start interacting with those beings. Now, we know that somebody like Valiant Thor is here to protect us, and we know that there's other beings that are like him that are also probably here doing the same work. He's the one that's out in the forefront because he's the one that was at the Pentagon, and he is the one that is the head of this Council of 12, as Dr. Frank told me. So a lot of people just individualize him like there's only one person here trying to help us, right? There's many from what I understand here that are trying to help as well, that are of his same caliber. So that's actually reassuring, I think, for the people. I mean, I know it makes me feel reassured, and that if we just keep working on ourselves spiritually and we keep growing, that's how this planet is going to lift up and become fully conscious, and then everyone will really start working their heart, using their heart to rule their mind. And when that happens, that's when the whole transformation takes place. It's a really beautiful time and thought about that. And when you think about it, it's the thing that's going on the planet now, even though there's all this craziness that's going on, there's also all this incredible beauty going on. And I don't want people to forget about that.
Do we know if Valiant Thor ages? Does he die like humans do?
Nope. He's going to look that way, and they don't die. And But, you know, here's the thing. We don't know a lot about created beings. So I've often wondered that. What would it be like to be in one existence for the length of time of a universe? How are they able to, how would you deal with that? Because imagine, like, you living forever and having one wife, right? What would that be like? And
hold on, did you say one wife or one life?
One wife. No, one wife, meaning, you know, like if you were going to live in existence with one wife for the rest of your long, long life, right? So, I've often thought about that, but there, you know, the thing is now Valiant Thor does have a wife. Her name is Dina. She's not a created being, so at some point she will pass, and they do have a daughter, which they actually named THAL Dina. They put both their names together, and she would have been born in the 70s. So she'd probably be, about 40-something now? Something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, but again, whatever she looked like at her perfection age, she would have stopped aging at that age and will look like that for the rest of her life. Isn't that amazing?
That would be totally amazing, because I'm looking at this, and she's born in the 70s. She's around my age. And
yeah.
And I still want to hop on that ship, man. I could use some regression therapy right about now.
Well, Dave, I hope they invite us both, and some of the listeners who want to go. I would totally go myself. I think it would be one of the most incredible experiences ever. And I have to tell you, throughout all my years of casting, I've asked movie stars, I've asked actors, regular actors and television actors, I've always said to them, if you were invited to go on a spaceship ride around the universe to get a tour, would you go? And most of them said yes, and very few said no, they would be too terrified. But that just goes to show that there's a lot of people are really open to it. So
mm-hmm.
I just think it's great.
Well, you know, we got to find that ship, Craig. We got to find that ship.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's all that comes down to, my friend. We got to find that ship.
Actually, I think the ship will find us.
Well, let's put it out there. How has the UFO and extraterrestrial community reacted over the years towards the Valiant Thor story? Because the one thing that I have learned in my 2 short years of being in this field is that you have the people who want to believe, you have the people who believe everything, and then you have the people who are just altogether, I don't want to call them skeptical, because I can't even give them that privilege. They're just rude about everything. How has the reaction been, Craig?
Well, the reaction for me has been pretty good. I would say about 90%. Dr. Frank, you have to remember, he was doing this in the 60s all the way through. He was met with a lot more skepticism, I believe, but he also one time he went and spoke in Korea and met the president and everybody there, and actually spoke in a stadium. There were so many people that wanted to learn about Valiant Thor there. And he was on the stages with who's the guy that built the rocket, the big famous guy? Why am I blanking? I see his face.
Oh, goodness. The German guy. The German guy.
The German guy.
Yeah, let's just call him German guy for right now until it pops into our head.
That dude. I want to say like Weinhardt or something like that.
Werner von Braun.
Some listeners out there.
Von Braun.
Werner von Braun. Thank you so much. That's it.
I knew it would come.
That's it. So he's, he was on stages and things with him as well in Germany and toured and all over there. And but I think a lot more people are open today. And what I always say to everybody is, I can tell you what I've learned on this journey with this, as I've shared with you guys today. So I can share with you what Dr. Frank shared with me, and then I can share my experiences, especially with that healing with THAL, and my experiences writing the script and feeling who they were in my feeling body, and those things, and then everybody just has to take away with whatever their belief system is. And Dr. Frank used to say, if something doesn't sit well with you, just take it, put it on a shelf, let it sit there for a while in contemplation, and then revisit it later, and you might understand it more. So again, all I'm doing is just sharing experiences here, and I leave it up to everybody else to make up their own mind about the story. But I'm still learning about the story as we go, and as we go, I'll be sharing about that story. And when we make the big feature film, I'm going to be also doing a companion sort of documentary that we can do about all these other things that we've found along the way, and documentation and people who have met Valiant Thor and all of that, so that the public can then see that, and then they can also make their own determination after seeing that documentary as well. So I just want to, I'm like everybody else, I just want to explore it. And I have to say, working in the movies, about lots of movies about aliens coming to take over the Earth, it's quite refreshing to work on a movie that's about something good as well. Like The Arrival. I love The Arrival. And I thought that was great. But this is a whole different story because it's as it says on the cover of Stranger at the Pentagon, based on a true story. So, but everybody's going to have to decide for themselves if they want to believe that story or not. So.
We only got about 2 minutes left with you, Craig. I would love it if you gave people information. I told you this would be the fastest 2-hour interview you ever had.
I know. It flew by. So if anybody wants to check out, they can watch the short film. If they want to get the book, the posters, all of those things. I even have Valiant Thor's signature that we put on a little picture of him on kitchen magnets, because I saw it in Dr. Frank's computer one day, and I said, "That's his signature?" And he goes, "Yeah." And I said, "Oh, can I have that?" And he goes, "Yeah, sure." So all of that is on the website, strangeratthepentagon.com, and you can read about the short film, see the short film cast, read about the feature film as well there. And then my book trilogy is called The Autobiography of an Extraterrestrial Saga. Book 1 is subtitled I Am Tehran. Book 2 is Waking Tehran, and Book 3 is Tehran's Dossier. They all have really great Amazon reviews. Book 1 has like 70 reviews out of 4.7. Book 2, I think, has 30 reviews at a 4.8. And Book 3 has now 19 reviews at 5 stars. All the books are fully illustrated with all the extraterrestrials, all their stuff, and that's autobiography of an ANET.com. So people can check it out there.
My friend, what a pleasure. What a pleasure.
Thank you
to
so
have
much,
you
Dave.
on.
I really enjoyed it.
Well, we got to do it again. We got to do it again.
We will. I would be happy to come back on and talk some more.
Awesome. Craig, you hold on one second. I'm going to head off into commercial. Craig Campobasso, his website personally is craigcampobasso.com if you want to check it out. Very talented man, very knowledgeable in the land of Valiant Thor. What a privilege to have him on tonight to talk to all of you. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio. Coming up in hour number 3, we have a triple E attack. Everett Themer, Eric Markham, Eric Cooper, all joining us. And go, Teresa. Happy birthday, my dear. You are beautiful on your birthday. We'll be right back after this break.
The SOR Sightlines is a place for you to find answers to your strange experiences. Hi there, this is Mike Schmidt. If you have had an encounter with ghosts, UFOs, Bigfoot, ETs, or anything else that doesn't make sense, head to spacedoutradio.com and file a Sightlines report. All information you give is 100% confidential, and I will personally help you find the answers you need. SOR Sightlines, your answers are a click away.
Have you got your Cosmic Passport? If you need one, tune in to Cosmic Passport on Spaced Out Weekend. This is Elizabeth Anglin, ET experiencer, spirit medium, and host of Cosmic Passport. Each weekend I'll be bringing you interviews and support from other paranormal experiencers, and the best in intuitive spiritual guidance from across the globe. It's all happening starting at 9 p.m. Pacific Time, midnight Eastern, on spacedoutradio.com.
Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski, lead investigator with U4COP. On the final Monday of every month, you can listen to me and host Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio's Strange Days. We're going to get to the heart of the matter when it comes to what's happening out there. People are seeing and experiencing things from ET contact to Bigfoot, and I want to hear about it. Your experiences are what we investigators need to help solve these unknown mysteries. So tune in at spacedoutradio.com to the final Monday of every month from Butch Witkowski's Strange Days.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. With their money-back guarantee and the many benefits, how can you afford not to get one? Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com for mind, body, and spirit, and expect a miracle.
This is your medium, Joanna, from Spaced Out Weekend, 2 mediums and a large. I would love it if you would come and join us with host James Tyson every other Sunday on Spaced Out Weekend. Together, we will take your calls and your questions live. Our goal is to provide you with a positive outlook on deep questions that you may have. Questions regarding love, relationships, money, or whatever else is on your mind. Come and check us out at spacedoutradio.com.
Have you checked out the SOR Spacewire at spacedoutradio.com yet? Every day we post the latest stories regarding the weird, strange, and completely unbelievable. From cryptid and UFO sightings to the conspiracy world, we tackle it all. Hi there, I'm Eric Markham, Space Out Radio's news director for the SOR Spacewire. And if you have a story, I want to hear it. Email me at news@spacedoutradio.com.
Patrolling the Pacific Northwest, we are always on the lookout for the strange and unassuming stories that real people are experiencing. Hi, I'm Vincent Zunza from Pacific North Weird. Me and Alexandra Sullivan have teamed to bring to you those odd stories that never seem to make it into the mainstream. Stories so weird that will leave you scratching your head wondering, is this real? It's as real as it gets with Pacific North Weird. You can watch our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Become more intimate and interactive with Spaced Out Radio. Join our Space Travelers Club with your new membership. For $5 a month, we'll provide you with special access to the website, monthly prize draws from books to psychic readings, along with monthly newsletter, private interviews, and more. Sign up today to be part of Spaced Out Radio's experience.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
Don't have time to listen to Spaced Out Radio Live? Wherever you are, the car, the office, the shower, or even if you're traveling, we're right here for you. Each Spaced Out Radio show can be found on iTunes, TuneIn, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. It's the perfect way for you to catch up on our shows. For more information, just head over to our website, spacedoutradio.com, and tune in to us today.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Strange creatures lurking in the night, the sounds of wood knocking in the forest, odd happenings right out of a fictional world. These are the reports I love. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, and I would love it if you join me and Spaced Out Radio host Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month on our journey into the unknown land of cryptozoology at spacedoutradio.com. From Mothman to Frogman and everything in between. Hey, they don't call me the crypto guru for nothing.
Did you know that Spaced Out Radio runs 7 days a week? Hi, it's James Tyson from Spaced Out Weekend. Every Saturday and Sunday night, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, you can join me and my guests for some great chatter about what's going on out in the universe, or even in that dark part of the basement you really don't want to go back into. Well, let's find the answers to your experiences together. So come on up to Uncle Jimbo's cabin on the weekend. For more information, look us up at spacedoutradio.com.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and hashtag Spaced Out Radio, and on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back to the third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. Good to have you along for the ride, all of you. Thank you so much for being with us. We really do appreciate you tuning on in with us, because we like to have fun around here. We really do. And once again, go Teresa, who's in the Spaced Out Radio chat room on Spreaker. Thank you so much for being with us on your birthday. For you to spend your night with us on our birthday, that's pretty amazing. So thank you so much for doing that. We want to remind you that tomorrow night on the show, we are getting back into the cryptid world. We will be talking with Jason Sudbury. Now, this is a guy who loves to do anything extreme with wild animals. I don't know why, but likes to deal with sharks. He likes to deal with all sorts of cryptids, Bigfoot, Dogman. He's out there investigating. Jason's a good dude, man. If you haven't heard him speak, make sure you tune in tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern time at spacedoutradio.com. Want to welcome in everyone listening in on the United Public Radio Network, live on 107.7 FM in New Orleans and over 160 countries around the world. Good to have you with us. We are also live in Sin City, the nighttime show of Las Vegas on Renegade Talk Radio. And if you're listening in on Revolution Radio, remember the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to freedomslips.com and donate today. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Allurophile. Allurophile is your password. Make sure you use it wisely, Space Travelers, because Allurophile is going to get you exactly what you need. If you want to follow us on social media, you can do so by going on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Use the hashtag Spaced Out Radio as well if you want to connect with me live during the show. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. Tune us in on TuneIn. Download this show and others on iTunes. We're on TalkStream Live. We're on what is it called now? Stitcher. And RadioGuide.fm. We're there, spreading the word, getting the listenership out there. So make sure you tune us in. And our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including joining the SOR Space Travelers Club for $5 a month. You can't go wrong with that. It's Triple E time on Spaced Out Radio. Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal and S4 with E Squared. Eric Markham from S4 with E Squared and the SOR Space Wire. And the man with some great hair, Everett Themer from Spaced Out Radio as well. Gentlemen, welcome back.
Hey, that was awesome.
Now, Coop, I want to start with you on this one, because you are Forest Moon Paranormal's resident ET expert. You've done a lot of studying recently on species that have visited Earth, namely from, we don't know if it's true or not, but we're assuming it is, the KGB book.
Mm-hmm.
When you hear Craig Campobasso talk about Valiant Thor, and that he arrived here in 1957 and was part of the Eisenhower speech, which was basically, we'll give you everything you want, the answers to life, absolutely everything, but you got to get rid of the nukes.
Mm-hmm.
With all the species that you have dealt with in your research, where does this rank?
I would say right up there, because I mean it fits everything we've talked about with the Venusian. Wouldn't you agree, Markham? Because
Yeah.
I mean the Venusians, even throughout the Russian ET book, it fits the whole friendly, peace-loving profile. And I mean, there's not many of them out there that are peace-loving. You got the Andromedans; they're peace-loving. The Venusians, and even if you look through we did the Contactee show back when we first started S4, and it all fits. Adamski, and oh God, who else was there? There's 2 or 3 different contactees in the 50s and 60s era, and it all fits. Now, you look at Venus, and you can't picture, and I understand because it came up in the chat earlier in the evening, but you can't picture anything living on that planet. But that's by our perspective. That's by the human concept. You got other dimensions. You've got the possibility of living inside the planet. You've got that's going by our science, and our science is very new. It really is. There's a lot we don't know, and probably never will know. But looking at the overall, I think it fits right up there. I was excited to listen to him because it's like, yeah, it fits everything we've studied and researched throughout all the races.
For a lot of people, the story sounds so fake, Eric Markham, because, let's face it, the Venus is much closer to the sun than we are. The average temperature on the planet is around 450 degrees plus. In Celsius or Fahrenheit, I'm not too sure. Celsius, I believe. So, I mean, when you look at that instance, and I realize that Craig had mentioned that the Venusians live underground to stay away and protect themselves from the heat. But a lot of people out there who are listening to this story for the first time, or maybe don't believe that there is life on a planet like Venus, never mind how they would get here, it's hard to fathom and hard to take as a serious story, even though it sounds so real. And there is photographic evidence of this image of a man who looks extremely human, claiming to be Valiant Thor.
Yeah, I have trouble with the living on Venus, but like Eric said, that's from our perspective. I mean, the atmospheric pressure alone would crush a human being before we got. It's like 92 times that of Earth. So at sea level, we're at 14 psi, pounds per square inch on Earth. Multiply that by 92 times. It'd be. I have problems with, the scientist, the believer in me wants to swallow the Kool-Aid, but the scientist in me is like, whoa, wait a minute. It would take incredible, and I'm not saying they don't have the incredible technology, but I mean, I think the think the longest any probe has lasted on I think the Soviets sent one, and it lasted about 6 hours maybe at top. So, when they start talking about Venusians and then living under the surface of the other planets, well, let's not forget that Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, those are gas giants. There's really no surface. It's just a ball of, they almost made it to be suns, but not quite enough mass to collapse on themselves. Just have a little bit of trouble with that.
Everett, you're a very factual type person as a paranormal journalist and setting up the journalism team on Spaced Out Radio. When you hear a story like Valiant Thor, is it more a situation of wanting to believe, or is there, enough fact to actually believe that there was something going on with this Venusian man?
I want to believe, but there are too many parallels to so many other things at that time. Back when he landed in Virginia, that was a time when school kids were taught that Venus was our sister planet, that it had an atmosphere and it was much like, could potentially be much like Earth. So it's really convenient that he came from a planet like that. They're really, facts-wise, everything is fact only because Dr. Strange has said it's a fact. We don't have really any facts in this. We just have a story.
So in your journalistic way, do you believe this is a story that could be believed? Or do you think we're just dealing with sci-fi? Because we are taking Dr. Strange's at his word.
Personally, I think this is science fiction. I think there are aspects of the story that could be possible, but I don't think this is that case.
Why do you say that?
I can't buy into it. Like Eric said, he wants to drink the Kool-Aid. I want to too, but again, at the time when he showed up, kids were taught, I think even into the early 70s, that Venus was a sister planet and it could have life and that. So it's convenient that he's from Venus and he's still here. But now all of a sudden he's not speaking to anybody. He's not communicating. He's in secret hiding. Why? If he was going to show up in the late 60s, kind of the memory of World War II is fading. We're starting to get into the Cold War. It's a good time to show up and spread that peace and love message. But now you could argue that there have been many times similar to that since then where somebody should have done the same thing. Why isn't he doing it, or why didn't he do it, in the 80s or any other time?
Or when the Berlin Wall came down, which was pretty much the end of communism. And I think that's a valiant point and a valid point. Cooper, I bring you in here now. What do you think when you hear what Everett is saying, that it sounds more folklorish than actual fact that this happened?
Well, and I can agree to an extent, but I mean, back in the 50s and 60s, you had all the contactees that came out, and not all of them were Venusian. You had, I can't remember all of them right off the top of my head. And when we were doing the contactee show, we're kind of laughing and smirking at first, but then, when we did the alien race show, it's like, well, there actually are, even according to this research point, that there really are Venusian races according to this book, if it's valid. But like I was talking to Markham when we were doing that show, I can hold validity to that book because of the fact that, one, he brought it out and he didn't try to make money off it. He was offered money to make the book published publicly, but instead he offered it for free. The second point was a lot of the cases of the alien races in that book actually matched a lot of the UFO research I had done, back in the 90s. So, when you have all these pieces to this puzzle that are actually matching, it kind of makes things more valid. So then when you bring up Valiant Thor, another piece to, a possible piece to this puzzle, I don't know. Now, could it all be quinky-dink because, there's points to Everett's opinion, and who's to say? It's all research, but we've got a picture of a human-looking guy. But you also have, the Philadelphia experiment, where I think it was a Philadelphia experiment, where you had that alien from Philip Schneider's dad of another possible alien. I don't think that was a Valiant Thor case. That was a whole different alien. So you've got multiple experiences that came out back in the same time era.
So, Mark, am I bring you in here now because I'm curious. We have talked numerous times over the lifetime of this show about President Eisenhower making a deal. We knew that the first offer was from a species, and I didn't know until tonight that it was actually Valiant Thor, that said, look, we will give you everlasting life, we'll tell you how to heal yourselves, live forever, but you got to get rid of your nukes. Obviously, during the Cold War, that didn't happen. Okay, if you believe Laura Eisenhower, which I think she's pretty genuine, in my opinion, she says that meeting did happen, and it also did happen with the Greys, where they traded technology for people. 2 and 2 on the conspiracy theory side here is, more than just wearing a tinfoil hat, in my opinion. Do you think then, after what we heard tonight from Craig Campobasso, that these two stories are tying in and maybe we are a step closer to putting together the puzzle on whether or not President Eisenhower actually made a deal with aliens?
When I've watched that final State of the Union address, and you look at Eisenhower's face when he is telling people to beware the military-industrial complex, and he looks haunted, and it kind of gives me the idea that he signed this, or he thought maybe it would be a good idea at the time, and after it was too late to renege on the deal, it dawned on him that maybe he had sold our souls for very little gain. I have a hard time with the Valiant Thor story. Like Everett said, when he claimed to be from Venus, everybody on Earth didn't realize that it was closest thing to biblical hell as you can come to, as far as surface temperatures. Sulfuric acid rains on the planet. It's not. It just doesn't seem like it would be conducive to anything we would call life. So, to me, it sounds more like a mythology from the 60s, blended in with the warning that Eisenhower gave, and it makes for a plausible. It almost makes for a plausible story. I'm not.
Well, I mean, there is. Let's be honest here. There is things to be skeptical about. The fact that he can live forever, dematerialize through walls, right? That his wife is not one of the creation, but his daughter is, and his daughter is in her 40s, living here on Earth, but still looks like a 30-year-old. I think we all would appreciate having a wife like that for us men, So I'm just wondering. I mean, there's a lot of sci-fi in this, if we could say that just doesn't make sense. Okay.
I know, it's almost like a bunch of comic book. I mean, even the guy's name, Valiant Thor. Okay, that. I can go with maybe the thing. I can almost go with the Eisenhower selling us out for the technology. He was a general, and he would have thought of the tactical advantages of being able to vaporize our enemies with, advanced weaponry. I can see that. But the other just seems like a mishmash of 50s sci-fi and Marvel comic book heroes. I can't get behind it.
Let me bring up, and you can vouch for this, Markham. Every race that we studied for our three series of shows we did, there are no alien races that live forever. They all have a lifespan. And on the other side, as far as materializing through walls, that's a known abduction trait. The aliens do come through walls for alien abductions. So that part of it, I could believe. But as far as him living forever, no, there is no alien race that we've researched that they all have lifespan.
The only way I can imagine this immortality thing would be if somehow they engineered. There's a thing in the cell called a telomere, and as cells divide, the telomere becomes more fragile, and it's a major part of what causes us to age and degenerate. Now, if whoever created these things could put like an auto-fix into their genetic code so that the telomeres stayed strong, as well as other factors, maybe, but if you could do it for your created beings, why wouldn't you do it for yourself? Or is there I personally would not want to live forever because, especially around other mortals. My God, can you imagine watching all your friends and loved ones die constantly?
Every 100 years, go through a whole different set.
Yeah, I don't think I could do that, and I don't think anything that wasn't mechanical would want to. Nothing that I can't imagine. And this is purely human centric. I can't imagine, from my point of view, wanting to have to hold down a job, raise kids, pay taxes, all the BS that comes with being a human existing in our contemporary society for hundreds of years.
Mm-hmm. But Markham, you kind of brought something up that I was having a problem with kind of grasping is, if he's a created being, what is his consciousness like? Let's bring religions into it. Does he have a soul? What is his consciousness, his internal existence?
You got to wonder. That brings up a good question, because I would think it would have to be nearly zombie-like, or have almost like a set firmware to keep insanity from creeping in. Mm-hmm. I can't imagine this eternal being just a 100-year, 70-year lifespan wears a person down. I can't imagine not having.
Okay, but
maybe a soul is an acquired thing through life, but I think you'd have to have illness. You'd have to have bad things happening.
But Preacher,
in order to mature that.
Preacher, I'm going to cut you off here for a second, because I'm listening, and I'm going to play devil's advocate here for a second. Okay? Because this is a paranormal show. These are the topics we discuss. And, I realize that people are going to choose what they want to believe and what they not want to believe. But one of the things that I'm going to play devil's advocate about is this topic. Okay? We are trying to look at this from a completely human scale. We have no choice. We have no other way to do it. Okay? So to say that this didn't happen or couldn't happen, that's pretty much the exact same thing as saying, well, Dave's experiences didn't happen. Other people's experiences didn't happen because how would they get here? What would they be doing? Why would they be coming to talk to the president? Why would they come back and leave? Why would they take a human life? Well, maybe she was hot. Okay. Maybe she suited his fancy. I don't know. But we have to look at this too with as skeptical as this story can be. We also have to remember the field that we're in and say, well, it makes for a good, interesting topic.
Yeah,
it does.
It does, but it's a matter of taking something that is plausible that could have happened and then adding mythology to it. You know, you having the experience of you have had don't reek of a comic book storyline, or what you encountered is plausible. Some of this other stuff seems like there was a plausible basis that just got a mythic overlay piled on it.
Okay, so let me ask you this then. If by chance this is true, okay, and he basically came down and crashed and said, "Take me to your leader," okay, and they obviously did that, how else is this supposed to go down?
I think that this story has elements of truth in that I can see something like this happening. I don't think this is that instance, but I can see somebody from another planet or an alien race coming down here and doing something like that, wanting to speak to leaders. I don't think that they're going to crash or land in a field and be found by two police officers. I think it would be more subtle. I think they would find a better place to land, whether they chose an Air Force base or Area 51 or somewhere along those lines. I don't see them landing in a field in Virginia. And I understand you can make the argument that it's close to Washington, it's close to the center of our federal government, but still, why in a field? Why not at a military base?
Because they crashed, didn't they?
No, apparently he landed.
Okay.
Apparently he landed. But, you know, don't forget, Everett, and I'm going to play devil's advocate again here. Okay, I seem to be doing a lot of... I'm feisty tonight, man. Feisty. Okay?
So is the beard.
All right. But what I'm saying, though, is when I hear you speak, okay, what I am hearing on my end is I am hearing an answer of 2017 thought. Not 1957 thought, where there wasn't the population, things weren't as dense, people still treated people like people, and people minded their own business. And if he crashed in the middle of a farmer's field, since people back then were more church-going than stargazing, there is a very good possibility that it was missed, especially maybe if it happened at night.
And why couldn't it be police officers? We have many cases where police officers found or chased UFOs. Maybe not.
Well,
and it would be, if police officers were tracking him when he landed, they would go approach it.
But we keep going back and forth. Did he crash or did he land?
Apparently that one landed.
If they're I come down to the point where if these people are superior, shouldn't they be able to do this more efficiently than just whisper in a few ears behind the scenes? Never really getting the attention or the media coverage.
There was no media coverage back then, man. There was barely TV.
It just seemed, there was radio, though. Think of it, Huey Long? Some of the televangelists, they were radio evangelists that, thousands and thousands, if not millions of people tuned in to their radio to hear these people talk. And I just think they would have been able to get the message out there in a better way than just sneaking around trying to do it behind the scenes. People are like cattle. If you get them all headed in the same direction, if you're an alien race and you want to see something evolve or go away the way you want it to, you know that it's a crowd mentality with humans. And it doesn't seem like any of these these advanced we want to help you space brothers have ever caught on to the fact that you're not going to get you're just spinning your wheels if you're trying to do it in the back, in the back. Mm-hmm. In a covert manner. It's not going to happen unless they've got this, I guess being immortal, you could take the idea that, if it takes 10,000 years to get them around, that's a blink in the eye to an immortal being, but it just doesn't seem like a very efficient way of trying to do social engineering.
Okay, but what's efficient, though? Because if they are visiting here for the first time, I don't know if they ask permission. If I drive down to North Carolina where you are, I may get lost. I may not know where I'm going. I may have troubles trying to, get through the accents of some people to understand, because you guys do have a lot of accents down there. Right? But the whole point is, once again, I can say the same thing. Back then, it was a simpler time, man. Okay? I look at my grandfather back in 1957, and fast forward to when I was a teenager, and him and my grandmother came on holidays with us down to Disneyland, and he's walking around, or on our drive down to Disneyland along the I-5, I'm looking at the aircraft, and he's looking at the cattle and the horses. And all the ranches, because that's what he grew up on. That's what he knew. The church, the farm, and that was life. And if this guy's crashing in the middle of a farmyard, or landing in the middle of a farmyard, coming from umpteen billion miles away, I don't think he had a map. I don't think that his GPS coordinates had Siri on there saying, turn left at Albuquerque, right? I don't think that happened.
Well, I'm going to play devil's advocate to you. If they had the technology to get here, they're more advanced than us. And if we, at this stage in our development, have GPS, satellites, cameras that can read license plates from space, wouldn't a more advanced civilization who was planning to come here and hold our hands and pull us along not have already zoomed past that technological era that we are just now getting into?
Yes.
We're assuming that, okay, they could get here, but they were essentially early 20th century human mindset, when in order to have gotten here and to have done the things they did, they would have had to be at least 100 years beyond us. They'd have had to be 100 years beyond where we are now.
I would agree with that, especially technologically to get here. The whole GPS thing was kind of a joke, because I did throw in the Siri thing, right?
Right.
But they'd probably, if they are monitoring us from Venus, let's turn the corner here. and Coop, I'm going to get your opinion on this. If they're monitoring us with their satellites or their spy cams or their, thermal imaging or whatever they're using up there to check out Earth circa 1957, I guess what I'm trying to say here is, do they really know how we act? Do they know how we respond? Do they know what to do? Because back then, when something strange happened, people didn't get on social media to say, what do I do in this situation? No, they called the police. So, of course, it doesn't surprise me that 2 police officers show up to figure out what the hell's happening in the middle of a man's farmyard.
And I'm pretty sure they can pick up radio broadcast even back in the 50s. If they were actually monitoring Earth, they would have been picking up radio broadcast, and so they would have known a little bit about humanity and how Earthlings act.
At least in our pop culture references.
Right. And considering they consider us space brothers, they know how we're treating the planet back then. So, but I think my main concern with all of it, and I know the answer is we created the mess, we got to fix it. But out of all these races that are supposed to be monitoring us, and the other half of them are at war with each other in our own galaxy, how come they aren't stepping up? And I know the answer is because you created the mess, you fix it, and that's always going to be the answer. But are they going to let us destroy the planet? I mean, whether they're predatory or not and want our resources, they still don't want us to destroy the planet, either way you look at it.
Mm-hmm.
Dave, before you ask your next question, let me play a little devil's advocate here. If they knew we had nuclear weapons, why didn't they land where the nuclear weapons were? I mean, obviously they have to be able to tell where our military bases are if they're aware that we already had nuclear weapons. Why out in a field? Why not somewhere where it makes a little bit more sense?
Because he didn't make the left turn at Albuquerque. We've already gone over that. Look what happened to Bugs Bunny all those times when he didn't turn left at Albuquerque.
God, what if that's how that could be valid in that's what that was their only contact with our. They thought you were supposed to miss the left turn at Albuquerque.
I'm Canadian. It's different on this side of the border.
Well, maybe not with the Venusians, but there have been cases where aliens have come down and shut down our nukes.
Yes, there have.
Yeah, they have come down and shut down our weapons, and that's what makes them a threat. I mean, to the government anyway. The government they don't want to lose control of their weapons. God forbid, So, yeah, there have been cases, and I don't know, maybe the Venusians wanted to take the peaceful political approach and approach our government and say, you know what, we'll give you peace if you shut them down. They didn't.
Maybe they overestimated our intelligence or something.
Right, and they did. Obviously, the government did say, hey, yeah, screw you, we like our weapons. We're a barbaric race. And so maybe they left. I don't know if Thor is still here or not, but maybe they left, and they told their other space brothers, that watch our planet, and they came down and shut down our weapons. So I mean, you could look at this in a whole lot of different ways.
I just have a trouble, like Everett was saying, but in that era, we didn't realize that Venus was a hellhole. So it would be easy if you're just wanting to BS a bunch of naive people to say, yeah, I'm from the second planet from the sun, Venus. We've been watching you guys for a long time. We're here to help. Well, then in 1961, the first Russian probe goes there, and it's like, holy crap, this is like a Dante's Inferno. Yeah, this is not a good place to be. Well, then you've got this person that's already invested all this time and effort into building his Venus persona. So you switch gears and say, you know, why didn't it? Just sounds to me like the story got modified as the facts about Venus came out. Oh, well, we live under the surface. I mean, why didn't that come out first?
Here's where I stand, but at the same time, you're right. But like I said earlier, and like Dave said, we're taking it from our own perspective of it. We're taking it from human science, human beliefs. And you know as well as I do, through studying the different alien races, that they're physiologically and they're anatomically different than us. A lot of them were described as having different features and having different, right down to the stomachs with some of them, and the lungs, the lung capacity with some of them.
It just seems that something that evolved or could, I'm not saying life can't exist on Venus, but what it would take to survive on Venus, then to come to Earth, the oxygen would kill them first off, because it's so, we've evolved to live on oxygen at a certain percentage. But if you dive, as a certified diver, I can tell you, as you go down in depth, oxygen is not your friend. Yeah. Oxygen becomes toxic. If you do a 100-foot dive, at that point, you can get nitrogen narcosis because of the concentration of the oxygen, the way it affects body chemistry. If you come from Venus that has sulfuric acid rain, a carbon dioxide, carbon dioxide, sulfuric, this horrible. Even if the pressure didn't kill us, one breath of Venusian atmosphere would destroy any Earth-based life. It just doesn't seem to me that it's plausible to come from such diametrically opposed environments. How does this guy survive our oxygen content when there's none over there? Like I said,
Have you traveled there, preacher? Have you been there to test it out?
Well, no. Just what the probes, just the information that the probes have sent back. Now, if all that has been lies, and it really is the beautiful garden spot Eden, or as some people think it was Eden, and we got kicked out to Earth, it's a whole different story. But I just don't. The scientist in me can't get over some of the gaping flaws in that story. And that's I'm
not saying that there isn't flaws in it. I'm not saying there isn't flaws that didn't make me scratch my head. Okay, but if you look at it with an open mind, right? We don't know. We really don't know. And the government, look what the government is hiding at Area 51. Or Area 52. Or Diego Garcia, where I still think there's a certain Malaysian flight hiding there. Okay?
Or Pine Gap.
Or Pine Gap, another one. We don't know what they're hiding. We don't know what technology we have. Imagine the thought in 1986... when we were learning that the SR-71 at 80-some thousand feet could read the name of a golf ball sitting on the green of the 18th hole of Pebble Beach. That's crazy talk. Nobody would believe that. Now we could.
But we can't keep going. We can't keep going. We need to accept this because we don't know. We need to look at it and everybody form their own opinion. But saying that we can't dispute it or decide for ourselves that it's maybe a big allegorical story that's just kind of made up of different pieces of other stories. We can't keep saying that because we don't know.
I agree with Everett on that one.
We do it all the time in this field, though. That's the purpose of this show. That's why we're paranormal.
Well, we give people a hearing. I mean, we give everybody a fair hearing. We don't call BS on them if we think it is BS. But deep down, I mean, some of the people we interview, I'm sure, as we are respectful to them, we respect their opinions, there's got to be that little voice in the back of our heads going, I'd like to smoke what he's smoking or she's smoking. There's like some of these stories really trigger the will, demand a willing suspension of disbelief. There's no getting around that. And
I
would love the universe to be as frickin' wild and crazy as these people say it is.
Do you believe Bob Lazar?
Parts of his story, yes. I think that's another one that there was a kernel of truth that ended up getting a mythic overlay.
Mythic overlay? That's new. I like that.
Oh.
No, I'm actually impressed with that one.
Well, these stories, I mean, just because the story stays the same over the years doesn't mean it wasn't embellished. I mean, any culture that has an oral tradition, that's where the tall tales like Pecos Bill and Paul Bunyan and these folkloric heroes, 300 years from now, are people going to look at Bob Lazar and Kenneth Arnold and some of the people that we look at now? Are they not going to look at them like we look at Paul Bunyan, Pecos Bill, Mike Mazur? Yeah.
Paul Bunyan wasn't real?
Well,
yeah, oh man.
I know you got his beard and love to swing an axe, but
he had a great beard.
I just really I just can't help but think that some of these things, they might have been true, or there's a kernel of truth, but things gain details in the telling. And I don't think it's a deliberate lie. I don't think, let's say it like this, or I just think it becomes a matter of, as you pass these down to each person that you pass it down to, it's different. You can be one person that knows a story and tell three people at the same time. Those three people are going to pass that story down, hearing every word you said, but it's processed through their own mental filters. The person they tell are going to get a different story than you told to them. It's just part of the way the human mind works. It's not a deliberate lie. It's just a matter of perception and communication.
Yet you buy everything about Tesla.
Not everything.
We don't know where his papers are. We don't know.
No, we don't. And it is a fact that when he died, the FBI ransacked his room and whatever papers he had. But one of the things about Tesla is that he lived in near poverty toward the end of his life. He would stay, and he never lived within his means. He would move into a hotel, and I'm not talking like a Motel 6. I'm talking a high class hotel, and would skate along until the owners finally evicted him, and he left his papers behind with every move. As he would move toward the end of his life, he left more and more stuff behind him. And it's just a matter of fact that these people were like, well, get this crap in the dumpster so we can rent this room back out. So there by the time Tesla died, there probably wasn't too much left of his papers. He had left a trail of messes behind him that somebody else had cleaned up, and he'd been discredited to the point that no one in that era would have said, "Oh man, we better hide these," or we better keep these. These are Tesla papers. It would have been, "Oh, that freeloading bastard done, left a mess we have to clean up." So, there's a tragedy there that, God knows what he left behind him that wasn't even there to be taken by the FBI.
But still, we don't know. Go ahead, Everett.
No, you finish your thought.
No, your hair is more important.
Back to Valiant Thor, one of the problems I have, and I don't know why I'm stuck on this, but these police officers, there's no reports, there's no statements, there's no deathbed confessions. There's nothing about them really even existing. And this was in an age where, these people should have by now had some sort of urge to tell their story. All the people from Roswell and Area 51, as they were getting older, making things up to be famous or to get their name in the paper or be part of the story. There's never been even a fraudulent or fake report from these police officers, someone claiming to be one. They just don't seem to exist, and that bothers me.
But if it's covered up by the government, Everett, much like everything that happens at Area 51, Area 52, Phil Schneider at Dulce, we're never going to know the true story, even if it was standing right in front of us. We're not going to recognize it.
But I would think that by now, one of these police officers would have said, even if it was just to get his few minutes of fame, I was one of the ones that discovered Valiant Thor.
Okay.
I found him.
There's over 900 D.B. Coopers.
Mm-hmm. Well, exactly. I mean, that sort of let me be devil's advocate again. That kind of proves Everett's point. There was a D.B. Cooper, and there's 899 fakers. So there were two police officers that were involved with this Valiant Thor. Where are the other 898? They can't even have a serial killer do something. They always hold back that clue that only the perpetrator would know. And, people will even cop to heinous crap that they didn't do for that attention. Where were all the attention seekers on this story?
Okay, let's take another example then, JFK.
Okay.
How many people got knocked off in that? If you go by the real story, okay, or the media story, not buying into the conspiracy of it, there's one shooter, there's one killer of the shooter, case closed. But look
I'm not seeing the connection here.
Absolutely, there's a connection. What you're saying is because the facts don't stand out in the Valiant Thor case, that they seem disbelieving, it's the same thing as saying that there is not enough evidence to say that the JFK assassination was a conspiracy.
I'm kind of seeing apples and oranges. I'm not making the connection myself, and I don't know if it's just because it's toward the end of middle of my shift, my first night back at work, and I'm tired, or I don't know. It just seems like we're comparing two different cases. And there are other people who have done deathbed confessions that said they were the shooter on the knoll, or, yes, we had Lee Harvey Oswald shot by Jack Ruby. And that smacks of a cover-up, and it's like fall guy, kill fall guy, tie up the loose engines, or loose ends. But there's been people that came forward on deathbed confessions that said, yeah, well, I was one of the shooters here, or the FBI did it, or Marilyn Monroe's mafia boyfriend did it because he was jealous that Jack was sleeping with Marilyn. There's still a mythology surrounding those two characters that were killed, and you don't quite have that same. The Valiant Thor story doesn't seem to have quite the same cast of characters that normally come out in this kind of story.
The point that I was trying to make with the whole JFK side is there are things that happen there that the government will not release. And if they've had and if they have had alien contact from another planet, okay, yes, Valiant Thor was in a couple of press conferences. There are photos of him, if that's him. But the point that I'm trying to make is there are certain things that the government will not, for whatever reason, let go of. JFK, they knocked off a bunch of people. You got literally 30 seconds, Everett. This hour is up.
They will parade him in front of press and have a press conference and announce this to the world.
They never admitted who he was.
But they won't let the police officers speak.
They never admitted who Valiant Thor was. It was taken by a press photographer. Damn you people! I will win this argument, and you know why? And you know why I will win? I'll tell you right now how I will win.
You've got the mute button.
I've got the mute button. Absolutely, my friends. Everett, Eric, and Eric, thanks, buddies. That was a lot of fun. You guys hold on for a minute. I got to wrap this thing up. If you're listening in on the Spaced Out Radio side, you hear Mr. Ron Bumblefoot THAL rocking us out of this show. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio. Tomorrow night on the show, we're getting back into the cryptid world. Jason Sudbury is going to join us. I haven't talked to Jason on the air in almost 2 years. I'm excited to get Jason back on. This guy's a real dude, a real investigator, looks at all possibilities. We're getting going at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern time, right here on the mighty SOR at spacedoutradio.com. I want to say thank you to all of our participants and listeners with your great questions in the chat rooms. And you, skeptic, at hashtag spacedoutradio. Snark away, my friend. Snark the hell away. I like it. Keep it on up, guys. Really appreciate it. Do me a favor if you don't mind. Go on out there and tell a friend. Join our networks, spacedoutradio.com, hashtag spacedoutradio, at spacedoutradio on Twitter, our Facebook page, Spaced Out Radio Show. Tune us in on TuneIn. Download this show and others on iTunes. And just like that, my friends, we are out. Hump Day is over. What are y'all still doing awake? It's late. Go to bed already. Go to bed. Go to bed. It's time to go to sleep. Hey, anyways, we'll talk to you in exactly 21 hours from now. Mr. Bumblefoot, take us home.